Thriving with PKU is our first Q&A video. Woohoo! I'm super excited, and I just want to remind you guys that this channel is for the PKU community. So if at any time you have a question, please feel free to email me, comment on one of the videos, or reach me through one of my social media platforms because I'd love to answer anything that you have. So I got a ton of great questions. I'm super excited. Let's get to the first one. Okay, so the first question was, what was the most difficult time in my life with having PKU and how did I overcome it? So I actually think I had two pretty tricky times for me to get through. The first one was in my teen years. I started to get a little relaxed on my diet. It wasn't that I wasn't going out and like eating hamburgers and seafood. I just wanted to hang out with my friends, and like for an example, one time I went to a Mexican food restaurant and I got a flour tortilla, and I ended up having a high level from eating that one flour tortilla when everyone else had these big old plates. And I always share that story because it just was really frustrating for me because I was like, man, I left the restaurant, I wasn't even like full, and I still have a really high level from that. So through my teenage years, I started to get a little relaxed, and I thought that was really difficult. I think I was mentally dealing with it more, whereas my mom and dad before, when I was younger, you know, they told me what I was going to eat, and they helped me become more independent on the diet, so I was ready for those teen years. I recognized that my high levels were not things that I didn't want to feel that way. I wanted lower levels, and I also went to a PKU camp. I started to get more involved with the PKU community, and I met women who were untreated on the diet, and it terrified me. So that was actually what kind of pulled me out of that time. I saw them and I was like, oh man, I started seeing symptoms in myself that I didn't realize were there. And then I started to kind of get my act together and get back into the groove of the PKU lifestyle and figuring out what that looked like as being an active teenager. And then I'd also say that the second tricky time for me throughout PKU was when insurance started to become my own thing to deal with. I thought it was super difficult to figure out what my insurance was trying to tell me or why I wasn't receiving my formula for whatever reason that month, even though it was supposed to come, and just all of the tricky things that come with PKU when you have to deal with it yourself. And what I did to help me is I just started to ask a ton of people in the PKU community how they handled it. A lot of formula companies now have patient care programs where they can help you deal with insurance issues on your own. BioMarin has the same type of program, and I reached out to those programs to help me kind of navigate the world of insurance. And I also used my mom because she rocks, and she was always still willing to help me get through those together. Okay, so the next question has to do with Mr. Hines. I was asked how I told Mr. Hines about me having PKU and what I would suggest about telling significant others when you're dating about PKU. And that's a great question. Mr. Hines' first name, by the way, is Tyler. So if I say Tyler, you know who I'm talking about. But Tyler and I have a kind of unique experience. We went to college together. We were both on the crew or the rowing team, if you know what that is. So we spent a lot of time together, many hours every day of working out, as well as traveling to go to races and things like that. So there was a lot of situations where I was eating and taking formula. And in fact, before we even started dating, he told me this yesterday and I didn't even remember this, but he watched me take my formula at a crew breakfast, and I don't remember this at all. And he asked me in the parking lot what I was doing, and I explained it to him then. So he knew all about PKU before we even started dating. And my crew team was so supportive with PKU and really tried to help with PKU awareness. So he was well educated by the time, you know, dating was even a thing. But I guess my recommendation for you, if you're in that, you know, time of your life that you're dating and thinking about telling people about PKU, I would just, I mean, it's up to you, but I really would maybe suggest before the first date, because if he or you know, she or whoever took you to a steakhouse or something, that might get kind of awkward. And I also want to just encourage you, I mean, it's not a big thing, and it could actually be a thing in your relationship where it's kind of like a testing to see how they react to it. And I know Mr. Hines, for me, my mom, it was the first time my mom couldn't go to a doctor's appointment. She still likes to go to my doctor's appointments with me, but I took him. We had been dating just for maybe a few months, and he we went to the pharmacy and they didn't have my formula after I'd been fighting for it, and I just literally sat in the pharmacy and just started bawling because I cry a lot. That's just what I do. And he went and he got my doctor and he figured out the full story from my pharmacist, and he just like took it and just dealt with that so wonderfully that I was like, man, he can do this. He's a good guy. I think I should keep him around. Okay, so I just want to encourage you after all that PKU is part of you. It doesn't define who you are. You want to find someone who's supportive of it. So of course you're going to need to tell them about it, but you might be pleasantly surprised by the conversation that happens. Okay, so the next question I got had to do with traveling and what tips I have for maintaining the PKU lifestyle while you travel. I've traveled all around the world and it can be tricky to travel with PKU, but I definitely think it's doable. Some of the tips I have, the first tip I have is to always carry more formula and food than you think you need. So you never know when you're gonna get stopped in an airport, or you can't fly back, you miss your flight, whatever. You always just wanna have more than you actually need. The second thing I would suggest is to carry your formula or food, whatever you're bringing with you, not only outside of your check-in bag, but also outside of your carry-on bag. I always carry it in like almost like a lunch looking pail, but I don't put it in my carry-on because I've had circumstances in the past where I've had to get to, or I've gotten to my airline gate and they've said, oh, we have to check your carry-on. And then you have to deal with the hassle of taking everything out of your carry-on just so that you have it with you. And so I just always carry it now in a different bag, separate from my carry-on, separate from my check-in. The third tip I have is when I go through security, I had a TSA agent one time tell me if I have everything out in the bin and it looks suspicious, then, or if it's something that looks suspicious and it's in your bag, they're always going to stop you and look through it. So take it all out and put it in the bin, if that makes sense. So I take out all my formula, all my food, I put it in the bin. Sometimes they look through it, sometimes they don't, but then usually it just makes it easier. You don't have to deal with the hassle of going and waiting and having them go through your bag and wipe everything down to see if it's contraband. The fourth thing I have as a tip for you is I would say if it's possible to stay in a place that has a kitchen. I always think that that helps a lot if you're staying with friends. Obviously, you can't avoid staying in hotels all the time, but sometimes hotels have like little mini kitchens, or you always can call in advance and make sure they have a fridge available that you can keep your formula in if that's something that you need to do. I don't have to refrigerate my formula, but I know some of them do. And then my fifth tip is to make sure if your formula is a liquid version to have a letter from your clinic just saying that this is a medical necessity. I actually also had I traveled around I backpacked around Europe for a time, and I had a letter of medical necessity, and it allowed me to carry a second bag onto the airline that I was taking, which usually was not allowed, but my second bag was full of my formula and food that I needed. So I hope that helps you with some of your traveling. Okay, and the last question I'm going to answer on this Q&A video is, are there ever going to be Thriving with PKU subscriber meetups or cooking events? And I think that is awesome. I read that question and was like, yes! But that is definitely a long-term goal right now. I would encourage you to follow me on social media. I always am posting when I go to PKU events where I'm at. And if you're in the area, I'd love to meet you. I love meeting PKU families all over. So definitely long-term goal. I'll let you know when we get there, okay? So thank you so much for your questions. If I didn't get to your question, I'll either write to you or I'll do my best to put it in a future Q&A video. We are looking forward to being back in the kitchen next week and talking about PKU food that's yummy and that you actually want to eat. So I will see you guys next week on Thriving with PKU.